Welcome to today's episode of Working Progress. We're very excited to dive into the topic of hiring success through job benchmarking. And I am thrilled to welcome Mindy Bortness, our guest today. I'm your host, Brittney Helt, and we're going to dive into this thing called job benchmarking. So, Mindy, welcome. You are the founder of Communication Works, Inc.
Correct.
And I think it's safe to say you are an absolute expert in job benchmarking and hiring. You've conducted, I don't know, hundreds maybe?
Likely,
of
yeah.
these job benchmarks.
I was in the first class
Wow.
of learning benchmarking.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably by now.
That's incredible. And you believe that hiring is an intelligence, not a routine. What's that mean?
Yeah, I just believe that hiring is so important in terms of job fit and longevity in your job and what you do day in and day out. So I think it's intelligent rather than like, okay, we just got to fill another butt, got to get another butt in a seat. So I see it on a higher level and something that organizations should spend more time up front to do it right. Because that, if we can capture that right fit in the first place, we've got longevity for that person and that job and the next job up over their career.
Right. Why not create happiness all the way around, right? For the customer, or the company, as well as for the individuals in those roles. Absolutely. So let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about why did you get into consulting and why did you get into benchmarking? Why is this something that you're passionate about?
So many years. So, and I love TTI. So just so you know, my whole career is based out of I'm a small business using all of the tools here from TTI. I have always been passionate about people being in the right roles. So I always say my mission is for people to be in the right roles and dogs to be in the right homes.
I love that.
So on the people side and organizations having the right people, before I even knew assessments existed in my career and as a young leader in my career, I just loved people loving their jobs. And I'm too selfish to be in a role that I didn't like.
Sure.
Right? And so I didn't understand being up against somebody who was miserable. Like there's other options for you. Could be a great job and you're a great human. It's just not the right fit. And we need to be okay with that. And so often we're not. So that's one seed of it, right? So I love the coaching. I love helping people find the right place. And then I did my first disc when I worked in media. I was at the Union Tribune in San Diego. I'm out of San Diego, actually Escondido, California. It was North County of San Diego. And I had a marketing team that was very disparate. So I had researchers, copywriters, salespeople, artists, and I was just Mindy. And I thought I could just cheerlead everybody to success.
Sure.
And we did our first behavioral, which was your desk. And it rocked my world because I really realized objectively that I was a really great leader for some and quite horrific for others.
Oh, wow.
By the way I approach things, and so it helped me realize that, the behavioral science, it's bigger than just work. It's your whole life. So you're also sort of working with your children and their different styles, et cetera. So that's a second seed. So you've got I love to lead people to their right place. And then I loved this diagnostic that cut right through and brought data to what people might call their intuition, or this is my experience. And then, so how to get into consulting, after the newspaper, I worked in international licensing. So did global branding for Hang 10 and Lightning Bolt and some really cool brands. My kids love that. They were little. And then I went to an internet startup, and I did bring these tools a little bit at a time with each of these new teams that I was on. And my new husband and I were in Italy, and 9/11 happened. And so when we came back from our honeymoon, the funding had been pulled from the internet startup. And so I like to say my new husband inherited 3 children, 2 dogs, and a newly unemployed wife.
Oh, goodness.
And so
Great things come out
Yep,
of
great.
those situations.
Exactly. And so that's how I kind of hung up my shingles. So that was, 24 years ago. And I took those 2 seeds. I took the seeds of helping people find their right place and the diagnostics that I knew would be trusted and accurate and validated, which were all the TTI SI suite.
Well, it sounds like it worked, because here we are all this time later.
Yeah.
And you're doing a great job. And you have this passion for job benchmarking. So before we jump into job benchmarking, for those folks who are listening or watching who may be unfamiliar with job benchmarking, how can you give us like a quick rundown of like, what is this and why should we care?
Yeah, I think of job benchmarking as the profile of the job, or the basically the definition of the job in its behaviors, its thinking patterns, its soft skills, its competencies. And benchmarking is a process where you're actually identifying that and getting that data, getting that blueprint, so to speak. And then you are also doing an assessment on the candidate and or current employee. And then you're actually matching or gapping and aligning apples to apples, that job and that human.
So to me, it sounds like it takes some of that bias or that subjectivity out of it, which could be a real benefit. But what are other areas where you would say, oh, that's really beneficial for a company? Like, why should a company who's looking for new people or looking to fill a role, why should they care about this process and this, job benchmarking thing?
Yeah. Well, if they're measuring turnover and they don't like it, that's one reason, because what benchmarking can do on the screening side is you're going to hire right. You're going to actually screen out misaligned people. The ones that you do like, you're going to be able to see today what you're going to get in 6 months, right? So it's very, projects, here's what you're going to get, and predicts, here's what you're going to get. So therefore, you can know day one what you're going to be coaching them on, because nobody's perfect to the job. So the job is aspirational. So you're going to get an immediate development plan versus something at 6 months where you say, well, you're doing great here, but you're not doing great here. We already know. Right. We already know where they're going to do great and where they might not.
It's like having a crystal ball.
Yeah. So that's one reason. If you've got turnover and you're not happy with it, or churn and you're not happy with it, you would want to do some sort of benchmarking process to help you screen for it. And secondarily, if you've got career ladders inside your organization, you don't want to lose the people that you've tangibly and intangibly invested in, then benchmarking different roles within the organization so that I can aspire to my next role up and do individual, independent development on that, I can hopefully move up within the organization and stay.
Love that. So it's not just for hiring.
No.
It can be used for other things.
Yeah.
Like succession planning, or maybe just learning who's a good fit, or maybe testing out a different role. Can you talk to us a little bit about how have you seen this used in organizations or in companies in a way that they felt the benefit of it?
Great question. I think one of my favorite stories on that, because I love that it was immediate, that we could see the results. It was a national retail chain. They have big footprint stores, and they were opening up a baby footprint. And so they wanted to do things a little bit differently in this baby. It was going to be a little bit more in depth, more knowledgeable for each customer walking in the door, et cetera. And they had typical, your manager role, your assistant manager role, and your salesperson role. And we profiled all of those. And because they were opening stores pretty swiftly, we were going to have 30 stores within, the first 3 or 4 months. Because we were profiling these folks coming into these early stores, we now had their data on what their, predilections were, what their desires were for their drivers and their behaviors for immediately possibly the next job up. So it was very easy to see an assistant manager in one, hired week 1 who got promoted to manager within like 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Because you could profile them against that secondary job. So that's one really fun immediate way to see people coming into one role and moving up because they've got the soft skills and the abilities to do it. Secondly, it also, because they were so open to this process, we also had a guy who was in choir, and he was super creative, and he loved decorating and setting up the store. And he was also an assistant manager in one store, and he got put on sort of an advanced team because he loved that opening part, and he was so good at it. And so he got to travel and open up the other stores, even though he's assistant manager in store A, because that was, they saw the data and they asked him questions. He's like, I love this part. So those were just really great pinpoint, very real examples.
Right.
Of
all because you had this blueprint and you understood the person. You could help them move to something different.
And they understand themselves, right? They're filling it out. That's the beauty of these tools is I'm not saying, here's what I think about Brittney. Brittney's answering, you're answering, and you know yourself, and they know themselves. And so what's delightful is their delight when they see their data. And everybody loves who they are,
right?
You know? And we all know we've got, I call them easy A's and summer school C's. We all have a summer school C. I don't want to spend all my day in that, but yeah.
I love that. So to me, it sounds like this is a much bigger, right? This is a much bigger process or tool or service, whatever you want to call it, than just for hiring. But how does it impact hiring? Can you think of anything that's like specifically like getting new people in the door? Or do you have any anecdotes or any stories of where you saw success in the actual hiring process?
Yeah, and I love the word process. I call it's kind of a people process, right?
Sure.
We have an accounting process. What benchmarking does is it provides a piece of your people process. Another real great example would be just happens to be another retailer with 1,300 stores nationwide. We profiled about 9 of their positions, mostly in the sales channel and leadership channel, and reduced churn by 1/3 within 4 to 5 months.
Wow.
So multi-million dollars added to their bottom line, their operating budget, because of the reduction in churn, and because they're such a large organization, they're actually measuring.
That's incredible.
So that's a good one.
I'd say so. I would also assume you're one of their favorite people these days.
I hope so.
So this sounds like this magical tool that can do no wrong, and it provides all of this great information. But let's talk about, are there misconceptions, or are there, have you seen pitfalls that can happen? Or what are the things that you're like, okay, let's use this, but stay away from XYZ? Are there any, tips or tricks that you can think of as you think back through the long history of utilizing these assessments and this process with different organizations where you're like, it kind of sounds magical, but we know there's no real magic, right?
Yeah.
Or is there?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because the first thing that comes to mind is an example of where they didn't follow it. So I'm not necessarily answering your question directly, but I'm thinking of an event planning organization that was very familial. Mm-hmm. Lots of friends and relatives being hired into it. And sometimes, despite the data, we're in love with somebody. We want, oh my gosh, he's so amazing.
We've all been there.
We want that. And
an incredible interview.
Yes. He fits right in. She fits right in. So there were at least a couple of examples there where, despite the data, and the data wasn't, so when you say a pitfall, it's not going to necessarily be black and white. It's going to be, here's what you're going to get. Can you coach to this? And so you're always nuancing how many misalignments can we afford or not. And so when you tip it a little bit more into more misalignment because you're absolutely in love with this candidate, this is an example of there were at least a couple of hires that just didn't, everything was predicted. And it just didn't, even with the coaching. So with the intention of coaching, it still was a lot of summer school C's. And so it ends up being an HR issue. And so now you've got 6 to 8 months of trying to find a different place for this
Right.
person.
Right.
And it's not really all about the organization. It's about the candidate too. A candidate wants to be in a place where they're thriving and surviving. They don't want to be miserable, and they don't want to take the job just because it's the only one there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit more about the candidate's perspective in going through the job benchmarking, process. What's that like for someone, and how do you prepare someone for that? And are there great experiences, or is it a little, I don't know. I've been around this stuff for a really long time. So to me, it all just seems like rainbows and butterflies and really cool, but I could see where it could be intimidating. How do you prep organizations to prepare their candidates for this process that you're using? Because it's kind of like you're staring into their soul.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think honestly, the less is good. Less is more, I guess would be
Sure.
the better way to say that. You don't want to overemphasize. It's not an end all. It's, we sort of advocate that it's a 1/3 inside outlook
Okay.
of the job and the candidate and their match. And your 2/3 is still super valid and relevant. Your gut, your experience, their resume, their reference, their background, their experience. All of that does not go away. That's very, very relevant. And we're providing that, view to the soul, as you're saying,
Yeah.
so we're providing that inside outlook that augments that outside in look. So I think for preparing, it's a little paragraph that we just use about answering. There's no wrong answer, be as honest as possible for the most accurate results, kind of a couple of sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that's kind of how I prep and give direction for them to give to their candidates. And another interesting fact that we have from one of our larger users, there's a misconception. Let's go back to your misconception that, it takes too long. It takes too long. Well, it's also kind of garbage in, garbage out. So if you have an assessment that takes 3 minutes, let's look at that.
You're getting a 3-minute piece
Yeah.
of data,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so depending on what tools we're using and how many sciences we're measuring, it could take 20 minutes. It could take 30 minutes. This one client I'm mentioning, it was a concern for them, the timing, but because TTISI is so strong in being able to, know when people drop off or not, we did find that there were people who would not take an assessment. So that's regardless. I mean, the playing field's even.
Sure.
There's a lot of our assessment tools out
Sure.
there. When they took ours, less than 1% dropped. And we're talking hundreds going through the process.
Wow.
Less than 1% drops. So it's a mischaracterization to say it's too long. It might be for you because you might have taken it 2 or 3 or 4 times.
Sure.
But this candidate, to your question about the candidate's experience, our tools are kind of fun. They're fun to click and look at, and you're on your phone and you're you're answering, and yeah. So
I love it. Can we go back to that? You said something about the 2/3, 1/3, and it's a process. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that can be a misconception. It's not all about the job benchmark, and that's not the one piece of data that we're using. So you sort of danced around it a little bit, but let's talk about it a little more.
Yeah.
Benchmarking is a piece of the hiring process. Is that what I'm hearing you say? And if so, what are other things in that process that you highly recommend be included?
I think they're normal process. Like, I try not to be threatening in pulling it in.
Sure.
I feel like we dovetail into whatever they're doing. There's all those typical ways are happening still, panel processes, video processes, emails, so that if they have to sort of test their written capabilities, all of that, phone screening, all of that is still very viable and lives in each organization. So I'm not an advocate coming in and saying this is the process of hiring. I'm sort of, well, what is your process for hiring? And here's where it might dovetail.
Sure.
Here's where we might slide it in. And frankly, some clients slide it in closer to the front and some clients slide it in closer to the back. And I always say, well, it's the highest and best use of your time and your budget.
Sure.
Let's measure how much it costs for you to get those panelists in there right?
Yeah.
It's an
Right.
employee's time and energy. So versus we've got the data that might screen some people out.
Sure.
So
Sure. And I heard you say just have a process.
yeah. Yeah.
Right? Right?
And we'll play.
Have a
We'll
process.
play in. We'll
Yeah.
tuck right in there.
Yeah. Because then you're just getting so much more insight, which is, as we know, because we've been around it, it's pretty incredible what you learn. And
Yeah.
you've shared some stories with us already around the impact that can make inside of an organization.
Yeah.
So let's peer into our crystal ball a little bit and talk about the future of, hiring and benchmarking. And I don't know about you, but I think I see somebody new pop up every day, and there's always someone saying something about a new technology that's coming to play. So what do you see as the future of using job benchmarking in this process, whether it's in the hiring side or in the succession side? What's your view?
Yes.
Just yes. It's happening.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective because having been in it, for 20 plus years, like I said, I was in your first class. I'm like, oh my gosh, we can profile the job and the candidate. This is magic. It is magic, right?
It is kind of magic.
It's amazing. It's predictive. It's fabulous. So I can say that those first years were highly educational in terms of like educating clients. But now, to your point, they're popping up all over. So there's less of that. And now we're one of many of the tools that we provide. So what I find, and I'm fine with a client leaving me and going and finding somebody else, go for it. I'm happy, go for it. And then you'll be back.
Which they have done before.
Yeah, I've got a handful that I just sort of like, I think you'll come back. And, and God bless them. If that's the better place for them,
sure,
awesome. I want, if I go back to that mission of like people in the right roles, dogs in the right homes, that's my greater good, right? If I can be a piece of that now or later, that'd be awesome. So I think we're going to continue to see more, mm-hmm. and I think it'll get weeded out. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I'm so proud of for the tools that we use here is that foundation is strong and solid and accurate and continues to be honed and rehoned. So that accuracy is what I've leaned on for my whole career. It's like, well, this is pretty, I'm not going to say infallible, but it's literally above and beyond in terms of accuracy and granularity, whether I'm doing it for benchmarking or, a communication workshop.
Sure.
So I think the future is people are going to lean more back into that. Like, well, let's, instead of garbage in, garbage out, because it's cheaper or flashier or cuter, let's go back to what's tried and true.
Sure.
And I also believe with that time element, we can now play more with our assessments and cut out questions if we think that client really doesn't want all of that. So it's a very flexible system.
Great. And how do you help your clients think about the future of benchmarking and hiring, and what advice would you give to them?
When I'm successful in helping them see that it is a people process, that it's from hiring through retiring, right? That whole journey. When I'm successful at showing that we can profile their next job up to keep them engaged and that we've got tools that can help them exercise and flex those muscles, that feels good. So that I will work on that as saying these are options. These are your big picture options. I don't want to overwhelm you, but here's what we can do under this umbrella of these tool sets, and then all these little pieces in between. And then it's really still up to them. What do they need, right? Sure. So what are we trying to solve for now? So It's very fair to say that I've got some clients that stay in one lane and some clients that stay over in this lane and some clients that dabble with me here and there. And I'll flex with what they need because those needs kind of go up and down.
Well, it sounds like that is the future. It is flexible and it is able to meet the need that you have in that moment.
Yeah.
Which is pretty special.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels
Yeah.
good. I mean, again, when we go back to that, people love who they are and the data is in black and white. So it shouldn't be too many surprises.
Sure.
We're not trying to surprise you with anything. We're trying to say, yeah, let's look in black and white and show you so we can have a real objective conversation. It sort of takes it away from this and kind of puts it out here.
It's kind of nice.
So we can look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, yeah, I am like that. Or
Right.
that does bite me in the butt. Yeah. Yeah.
Never. Well, Mindy, time has just flown by. I'm being told we're almost at 30 minutes.
Oh
so
my gosh, look at us.
I know. I could probably sit here and talk to you for another hour about this, but we won't. We won't bore everyone.
All right.
However, if folks are listening to us and they're like, okay, you all just talked about a lot. What's the one thing? What's the one thing that you want our listeners or our viewers to take away from the conversation today to really think about or keep, top of mind about benchmarking in general?
I guess I would look at what's causing them, what we say in business, what's causing them pain, right? So if they feel like they just have a role that they've just not been successful in finding that right match, or if they've got a role where they've got a lot of humans in it and it's churn, if those are some of the things they can't find somebody specific for their team, we can help you. So if you've got a people issue, we can help you. And that's what I would want them to know about benchmarking is it's likely a piece of that process that we can help you with to solve that and resolve it.
And it is
and
a
let you
people
sleep
issue,
better at night.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's people.
Yeah.
It's not some machine that's making all of these decisions for you. I think that is at the heart of all of this. And you can tell you're passionate about people and dogs, but people. Well, Mindy, thank you. If somebody wants to find you and learn more about this, how do we find Mindy? Where should people go?
Yeah, so my company is Communication Works Inc. So everything's spelled correctly. That's my newspaper background. So communication correctly, singular, works with an S on the end, inc.com. So Mindy at communicationworksinc.com is where they can find me. And find TTI as well, right?
That's right. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us about this. Love the stories, love the data, and hopefully folks picked up some nuggets and are able to think about things a little bit differently based on this conversation today.
Can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
One of the key benefits of our benchmarks is they have interviewing questions.
Oh, yes.
And
magical.
one of the big issues that I know hiring managers have is they may not have been trained in hiring. And so they're always trying to find new questions and how do I get to it? And I know a lot of organizations are pretty successful in behavioral questions, but I love that we also have the competency questions attached from the job and the drivers, the heart and soul, the gut of the human and the job. We've got questions to get to that as well. So hiring questions just help that smooth whatever their process is.
Extra bonus.
Yeah, extra bonus points. I wanted to share that. Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you, Mindy.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thanks for joining us. And we hope that you had a wonderful time listening to this conversation. You took some nuggets away, and we're hopeful we'll see you on the next episode of Working Progress.